All right, welcome everybody to the 12th and final, for now, Sensitive Skin Beer Virus Reading, the smart series with the stupid name. Yes, Karen, it is the final for now. This is 12 weeks in a row. I'm trying to cook a fucking chicken in the middle of this, you know, it's just enough. I will continue to do readings on Zoom, even if the unlikely scenario that everything goes back to normal. I'll keep on doing something, but maybe like once a month instead of once a week. This was really good to do while everybody was like totally locked down and, you know, in quarantine and whatever, all that stuff, but things are loosening up a little bit. Plus, lots of other people have started doing Zoom online readings. There's the, you know, Larissa Schmila does her lip balm on Saturdays, and then there's also Jeff and Sanjay do the local knowledge reading, which I will actually be participating in this Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 Pacific. Tales of ribald, badinage, and side-splitting banter from yours truly this Sunday. And that link is in the chat. You see it. I've also put a link. It's plug time, people. I got to do it. If I knew anything about whatever, I would have been doing this the whole time, but better late than never. Sensitive Skin Anthology. There's also a link for that in the chat box. And everybody who's reading here tonight is in it. That's Carl Watson, Suzi Kaplan Olmsted, and Arthur Nersesian. Also a bunch of yous who are all watching are in there too. So get one if you don't have one yet. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, here's my book too. Yeah, get it. I'm gonna drop the price on this on Kindle to 99 cents in a day or two, because I'm gonna boost it for that local knowledge reading, and I might sell a handful of copies, is what I'm hoping for. All right, let's see, what else I wanted. So my, what did I want to do here? What's going on here? What? Oh, geez. Well, so much for that plan. All right, let's get started. Again, thanks everybody for coming. And we've got a great lineup for you tonight. We've got Carl Watson, Suzi Kaplan Olmsted, and Arthur Nersesian. And we're going to get started with the great Carl Watson. And Carl, I'm going to be telling a story that you're mentioned in on Sunday. I don't know if you remember the Cab Calloway incident. Remember that? It's a long time ago. Whatever. All right. So Carl Watson. Okay, I'm going to put you. You can unmute yourself, Carl. Should be a little button like in the corner there. Let's see. See, in the upper right corner of your box, you should have like a little thing where you can unmute yourself. Let's see. No? Are you on a computer? You can do Control-Shift-A, or bottom left. Bottom left in the Zoom box, you see a mute button? No? No? Let's see, hover your mouse over the bottom. No? Well, we're off to a smashing start for the final reading. Please bear with us, ladies and gentlemen, while we work our way through these technical difficulties. So Carl, on the bottom left of your screen, you should see it says mute or unmute, and you can click that to toggle. Okay. Maybe go to full screen first. People are saying everybody's got suggestions and advice. We will soldier on and work through this together. Here's an idea. I'm gonna have Suzi read first. How about that? and Carl will figure out what's going on with it. We'll work it out. I'll get it. Let's see. Let's see. All right, Susie, can you unmute yourself? I have to. It says, oh, fuck Zoom. I'm so tired of this fucking Zoom bullshit. All I can do is ask you to unmute.
There we go. I am
Yes.
unmuted.
Oh, God. I hate Zoom. I hate it. It's like the PowerPoint and whatever. Anyway, Suzi Kaplan Olmsted has appeared in The Sun, Maintenant, Blue Satellite, 51%, F.T.S, Big Scream, PoetrySuperhighway.com, M.A.G, Lummox Journal, GetUnderground.com, and Napalm Health Spa. Oh, I like that. Nominated for 2 Pushcart Prizes for her chapbooks, Industrial Wallet and Elektra's Mouth, both from Virgogray Press. Suzi lives in Portland, Oregon, with her husband, the poet Marc Olmsted. Take it away, Suzi.
Hi. This is called Coronavirus Musing. I rarely leave the house, regardless of external phenomena, but I'm a fan of one particular kind of reality television, the extreme survival show. The out of doors has never been my milieu. I hate dirt, I hate bugs, I hate the heat, but I've binge watched countless episodes of a show called Naked and Afraid, where participants are dropped in some wilderness without clothes, given only a map, one tool of their choice, and a partner they've never met of the opposite sex. I'd undoubtedly die almost immediately if I did it, but I'm totally into backseat driving other people's survival. I've always had a little mental game I play with myself, planning for disasters. Not regular disasters. I'm totally bored with regular disasters. I've been through 4 earthquakes over 7.0 on the Richter scale, extreme flooding, and riots more than once. I've been preparing to get kidnapped for decades. I plan code words with my friends in the event of hostage situations. I still remember the ones from high school. Not why we chose them, just what they were. I'm ready for catastrophe, but I'm completely undone by ordinary obstacles. My 2018 taxes still aren't filed. I don't have a working phone. I've been meaning to sell my car since 2016. It's a piece of crap that is expensive to repair, so it's a cute convertible. But I never go anywhere. I live 2 blocks from the local train line and could take Lyft everywhere for less than it costs to keep the car. But I'm from LA. I've never sold a car. I'm a fan of the urban trade-in process. My car gets stolen and I get a new one, or it dies from lack of love and time. What am I trying to say? I'm not a fan of real life right now. My neck is trying to destroy me, and it's getting help from the rest of my body. This is called Agent of Chaos. I'm an agent of chaos, sent to make sure calm consistency is the one thing he never gets. Be careful what you wish for, and never make a vow you can't keep. Asked to churn the depths of Sahara, don't expect margaritas with salt. The llamas speak of terrifying charnel grounds to do your chud practice, when the demons, ghosts, and monsters come for you. Stay still and offer your own flesh to feed their hunger. Silly bunny, kicks are for trids. The punchline to an old joke I don't remember, but still think is funny as hell. I've never been in a graveyard that scared me. It's where we went to get stoned. Visiting the Sharon Tate house on Cielo. Murder in this sky. But I've been tortured by doctors my whole life. So the demons come to me, mostly kind, with good intentions. The sort that will probably ensure that these words die barely heard. And I offer up my flesh with the best humor I can muster. I know a charnel ground when I'm in it. Early morning.
All right, listen.
It's just a weird.
I was trying to do some applause there for you. I fucked up.
Oh. Thank you. Early morning. I lay beside you, awake before the sun as usual. My energy comes in darkness, after twilight, before dawn. The sun, everyone else's Powerball, makes me want to curl under a rock. Cool dirt lizard avoiding my enemy. We're in our 5th place in less than a year. In my dreams, I'm always somewhere different. Complicated labyrinths, a group house in the apocalypse, a family home, just not mine. I wake up wary, not sure where I am, never sure it's safe. But then the dawning, your soft breathing snore beside me, not the thunder that drives wives into another room, just a measured sound of your breathing, with little snorts tossed in, and your odd habit of sleep laughing, just a chortle here, a giggle there, for reasons lost forever to your dreams. And beloved, massive Expandicat, happily asleep across my stomach. His corpulence has spawned an endless list of funny nicknames that really betray our love and fear for him. 25-ish pounds of love in my lap, safe, warm, talking in his sleep as some happy cats do, while his lithe, sinuous, reincarnated courtesan sister flirts to wake my sleeping husband as dawn breaks. My family is a man laughing in his sleep beside me, a baby behemoth, mountains of black and white fur, and a flash of dandelion yeti. Every weekend, they run a marathon. On Oprah today from my rehab bed, voice stolen by a head cold, I hear about Rick, never able to walk, talk, use his hands, types out letters one at a time on a keyboard with his head. Rick's father says he's not disabled. He just needs extra help. And every weekend, they run a marathon. I changed the channel to Gilmore Girls. This is called Another Wheelchair Boy on Oprah. Eyes, tiny marbles in large moon face, blindness obvious in a glance, speaks of moonlight he has never seen with authority. Father and son share impossible fortitude, and the name of a now dead legendary porn star known for his prodigious dick. So I'm going to read that. This is called The Gangs of Beverly Hills. The mean kids in my neighborhood carried Louis Vuitton. There were no guns on Rodeo Drive, but a 16-year-old girl in 1979 with a Mercedes, a nose job, a $50 acrylic manicure, perfect highlights, and straightened, feathered, enormous hair, had too much invested in her brittle shell to get literal blood on her tiny chemin de fer jeans and sky-high platform shoes. Girls like this worked in gangs, their efforts slow, brutal, the torment of small cuts. The elementary school gym uniforms lent themselves well to the task. Woven cotton one-piece jumpers in a light red with no stretch, high-necked and low on the hips, shapeless at the waist, too short and narrow in the arms and legs for any flattery. They made all but the most athletic girls look like overstuffed sausages. A petri dish of cruelty and petty humiliations. I was younger than most and small for my age until the year I was 12. Virtually overnight, I became very busty. We had a cute young man as a substitute teacher in gym class. He had us run sprints. He stood at the end and watched us run with the children. When I ran, my breast ran ahead of me. He couldn't stop himself from laughing with the kids. He was probably 22. My little brother had a birthday party. It was Saturday night. I was out on the town with my parents and a bunch of little kids. We ran into a group of the Gucci wearing, out on their own on a Saturday night kids from my class, something I wasn't allowed to do. They loved my mother in the inverse of the way people love burgers but not slaughterhouses. Her, not me. As our gaggle of little boys walked away, I heard a handsome boy say of me, "I feel sorry for her." Mass killing in Beverly Hills, cause of death unknown. It's called Mom Used to Say. Life is Rashomon. My father plays King Lear. Mom plays Lady Macbeth or Catherine the Shrew, depending on the moment. Brother Tony and I were both busy with our own roles. We weren't always certain of the play. Mom used to say, "No one told you life was fair." Mom used to say, "Retroactive abortion might be a good idea." Mom used to say, "Do you know how much I love you?" Mom used to say, "Do I look fat in these pants?" Mom used to say, "You're lazy, fat, and worthless." Mom used to say, "You're so beautiful," and kiss me. Mom used to say, "You said you'd return that 2 weeks ago," and bang my head against the wall. She'd play skiing from the Nazis as we parallel turned down the slopes. She told Mrs. Berman, who showed boxes full of sketches I'd made during science class, though it hadn't affected my grades, the smart class and the honor roll. "Pretty good work, I'd say," and led me out of the room, sketches in hand. Mom used to say, "Elephants don't give birth to kittens." I'm not sure which we were. Mom used to say, "I need a facelift, don't you think?" Hating herself was my mom's resting bitch face. And I was never sure if it was the ways I looked just like her or the ways I definitely didn't, of which I'd come out worse. Without mutually exclusivity, both were probably true. Mom used to say, "You're a loser." But when creative differences got me kicked out of the planned performance of My Good Friends on a field trip to Idlewild when I was in the 7th grade, right before the show, I had little time and no ideas for what to do alone. She collected clothes from somewhere so I could have a lot of layers on and said, "Put on your red pajamas underneath." I thought she'd lost her mind. They were red, one-piece long johns, maybe even with feet. And I was still a tiny little girl. Mom said, "Do a striptease to let me entertain you," down to her actual underwear and double D bra, huge on my prepubescent form. Until I was just in my PJs. It brought down the show. I'm creative, but not the creative one. My mother used to say, "Be careful what you wish for." And sometimes that's the cruelest kind of true. And sometimes it's the best to never wish at all. My mother said, "Without children, there's nothing to live for." As I sat childless in my 40s, her group of friends agreed. My husband was jettisoned from family gatherings at the time. My mother used to say, "We go to family funerals just to make sure they're dead." Though decades living 10 minutes apart, I see my nephews every few years. Haven't been invited to the Aunt Suzie, to be the Aunt Suzie they could know. Fortunately, they got a spare Aunt Suzie in the deal. She may be in Australia, but their whole childhood, when I saw them, my mother always said, "You remember Aunt Suzie?" They'd nod their little heads for years, then insist that their Aunt Suzie was definitely not me. I'm a 12-hour drive away now, still unsure of my crimes. But I'm not a fucking Catholic. You can't excommunicate me. I've had the same best friend for 50 years. And geographical convenience means nothing to me. I'm that kind of Scorpio, 5 times in my chart. Sun, Moon, Rising, Neptune, and Mercury, Venus and Mars and Sag. I'm a fixed object, underwater volcano. I've lived countless airless magma underworlds. I'm not going anywhere. But Mom says, why are we estranged? I didn't know we were. My mom's review of Titanic was, where the fuck's an iceberg when you need one? When I was 11, she asked if there was anything about sex I wanted to know. In a blowjob, do you blow or suck? The only question I had. It's just a figure of speech, Suzie, my mom said, leaving it at that. I don't know what she told Tony, and I guess I never will, but her gift to me of a painting, I'm sure she just thought it wasn't good. But I love the thick red abstract and what my mother said, painted in black freehand. Her bloodied painting said, today I felt like something red, so I ate my mother's heart. I could have 100 lovers if I could wear a blazer to bed. My mother doesn't write much, but that's what her poem said. I'd think she'd know that blazers aren't as alluring as she thinks. But I've got my own collection, Mama in my head. She wasn't at all religious as a Jew, but crossed herself entering churches every time. Bread and butter, Mom would say, superstitious, when there was a reason to drop my hand. Never parted, in case you don't know what it meant.
All right.
All right! Toronto!
All right, that's Suzi Kaplan.
Good!
Yeah, do you feel good?
All right, then, listen. You know, we may be under clear blue skies, but you know, it's getting a little cool out tonight, but that ain't gonna stop us. Because if we try hard enough, we're gonna get this place. I said we're gonna get this place. Harder than hell.
All right. Thanks, Suzi. All right, participants, I am now allowing you to unmute yourselves so you can applaud and cheer and do all those things you want to do.
You hear this?
All right.
You hear this?
All right.
Love of God, Carl, stay unmuted.
Carl is unmuted. Woo!
Yeah, I was just going to hold up this sign.
All right, Carl is in the spotlight. Is he? Nope, I missed, because this fucking Zoom moves around. Like the names go up and down. There he is. There's Carl. All right. So I ask everybody else to manually mute yourselves now. Please mute yourselves. All right, so it should be just Carl. Look at that. Wow, you guys are like such sheep. It's amazing. You do anything I told you to, wouldn't you? Well, all right, don't worry. Very happy to have Carl here tonight. Carl Watson is a poet, fiction writer, playwright, and critic. He currently splits his time between New York City and an old barn in the Catskill Mountains. He is the author of several books of fiction and poetry, including Backwards, The Drowned Go Dreaming from Sensitive Skin, which was just released in a French version. You gotta get it. What is it? A contre-courant devant les noyés. All right,
Yeah.
All right. I thought it was going to be André Coup, but whatever. Okay.
They do what they want.
Close enough. Yeah, and so it's recently released in that version francais. So I'm going to shut up and turn it over to Carl.
All right. I'm just going to read some sections from this novel that is not out. And it's about a guy just walking walking downtown from Lincoln Center to the Lower East Side. And I'm just going to skip around a little bit. The guy's name is Frank, and his girlfriend is named Odie. So when he refers to Odie, you'll know what he's talking about. Frank did not believe in the spirit. He believed he was a bundle of atoms loosely and temporarily bound by weak cosmic forces into a flesh and bone bag that sort of blobbed through the street, thinking it was thinking. He was an itinerant without an itinerary, a falling man without a fugue, an obsessive walker for whom the world had value only in the approach, but never in the arrival. So the signpost that was always up ahead, Frank never reached it. That would be a kind of death to him. And if space abrades, then Frank suffered from space, even as he craved it. As he walked south, he felt the physical pull of the world against his weight, and it was something more than just mass times gravity squared. There was fear of lost control, walking or falling. The two motions could be confused after all, because a walk is actually a kind of fall from one plateau of experience to the next, as if one were stepping uncontrollably down a staircase made of slightly alternative universes. But you can't reascend the staircase because the steps disappear behind you. Even a mundane errand becomes a kind of travel narrative in this manner, but it cannot be retraced. The cliche is that you can't go home again, but hell, you can't even go back to the past second. You had to manufacture it. It was unnerving. The run-on sentence in Frank's head was similarly nomadic and unnerving, always leaving behind what was previously stated or explained. Mind and body colluded in their efforts, and Frank blamed much of what was wrong in his life on this confusion. He liked to feel he was merely living in tune with the world's natural trajectory, going with the flow, as the Zen sages say, but that was a philosophy of apathy, not spiritual agency. Still, to go with the flow was the prescription for a free spirit, and God damn if Frank wasn't a free man. He was certainly free to live and free to imagine his own death, and he often did that. Now I'm going to move downtown quite a bit to Avenue A. This is many, many, many chapters later. It was on Avenue A, the transition from East Village to Little LA was most noticeable. Little LA was a term Frank had coined as shorthand for the transformation of New York City into a film set. It was a controversial idea, and he remembered when it first occurred to him. A year or two back, he was standing out front of the Pyramid Club drinking a beer from a paper sack when an anxious stranger rolled up onto him in inline skates. The guy spoke in a low, troubled voice. He said, "The Californians are coming. The Californians are coming." He said it twice like that, like some beatnik Paul Revere riding into the LES bearing what he thought was news of colonization and a coming empire of reproduction. And like all the other Paul Reveres before him, whether they arrived on skateboards, razor scooters, segways, or electric bikes, he quickly hustled off, fearing for the quality of his social life. Frank put the episode down to typical New York City paranoia, but the warning made a mark because it was true. It seemed like there were a lot of Californians around. Frankly, lately he noticed an increasing number of highly confident people that could be seen on Avenue A, and they seemed unnaturally healthy and had a real great positive attitude about life. Not like Frank and his peers, who were mostly self-destructive depressors and nihilists. Film crews were turning up all over the city in the attempt to feed the public desire for an authentic experience. Of course, the selfish gene didn't care about authenticity, but the city bureaucracy did. They thought the film frame therapy might well save the city in its fin de siècle decline. People would no longer have to live in New York. They could live in the myth of living in New York, which was cleaner and safer and kind of super cool, really. Frank did a quick walkthrough of Tompkins Square. The homeless encampments of the 80s were gone due to the Dinkins renovation project and the new curfew laws. But that did not keep the park free from con men and other irritants. Frank spotted a wandering homeless poet who called himself Master Scorpius. So before he became an audience to the master, Frank made a quick U-turn and headed out to the East Side entrance. Back on Avenue A, he crossed the street to Ray's, thinking a chili cheese dog would hit the spot. A coven of crusties were taking up sidewalk space on the left, to the left of the entrance. For some reason, the crusties always regarded Frank as a member of a social class worthy of verbal abuse. "Fuck you, yuppie scum," they would shout at him. But Frank could not hate them. They were only his own past coming back to bite him. And these days, they usually brought large dogs with them, Weimaraners and German Shepherds, surefire deterrents to fistfights over territorial rights. So Frank continued down A. The East Village was in a state of economic and spiritual transition, it seemed. The world had gone topsy-turvy and right side wrong. Those late 80s riots about high rents had broadcast a revolutionary cachet that only served to drive the rents even higher. The last gasp of the bohemian lifestyle was being mocked by the very liberal press that once had been its champion. The Village Voice was an arm now of the entertainment industry. New York press was pro-development, and its most critical columns were being written by restaurant aficionados. Uptown on Broadway, a song and dance musical about being poor artists downtown, was playing to people from out of town, with the unwanted result that many of those audience members decided to move to town, and that drove rents up yet again. Ironically, the musical was called Rent, and how people fell in love with the chance to pay it. Everywhere you looked, life was imitating art. In the window of one bar, you'd see the cast of Friends watching reruns of Cheers. Women dressed up like the warrior princess stood in line at the Pyramid for Xena night. Sex and the City wannabes flocked to the Muffin Willie Tavern. Sports bars multiplied along with the TVs on the walls, and when there was no more room, another bar would open next door so the cloning could continue. There were still some outposts of critical thought, mostly older places trapped in the 80s, where rockers, artists, and literary pundits harangued each other in arguments over repetition versus influence, reflection versus essence, trend and conspiracy, and the existence of the public will. But it was all bullshit. In a city hypnotized by trends, maybe it was an unconscious drift towards some kind of mental communism, or maybe it was an X-Files plot, the smoking man bringing on the apocalypse. Or maybe it was the real reason Laura Palmer had to die. The only thing that saved the population from utter homogeneity was the speed of consumer culture. Trends had to mutate quickly to stimulate the flagging cash flow, as if unable to keep themselves interesting for an appropriate length of time. Faces flashed across the public consciousness to great approval. Monday, everybody loved Nirvana and Nine Inch Nails. Tuesday, it was Nostalgia Day, and recycled Lou Reeds and Bob Dylans were all the rage. That was followed by Gwen Stefani and the Harajuku plague. But the colorful outfits, the motorcycle jackets, the backward baseball caps, the flannel shirts, it was all too easily acquired, and the ubiquitous gig bags, much like the underwear of a post-punk frontman, were too often stuffed with newspaper. One day, the way Frank figured it, Smilin' Ralph was right. All people really wanted to do was fuck, eat, and sleep. But the former was dangerous and the latter was improbable. What with all the radio waves and microwaves coursing through their bodies? Of course, media picked up on the paranoia and turned it into a marketing phenomenon, announcing a new epidemic of sleeplessness. Sarcastic news anchors on every network laughed as they derided their audience for a paycheck. There's Tammy Cho and Brian Bozon of NBC's morning show sucking down strong coffee. Good morning, New Yorkers. Hey, and what about those nightmares? Trend or disease? New study shows nightmares might actually prevent heart attacks. Brian Bozon snickers off camera. He doesn't believe it for a second. In fact, he doesn't believe anything. He's jaded and overmade. More after this message, Tammy says, disgusted by her co-anchor's public cynicism. Flip the channel and there's popular anchor Randy Sunshine chuckling about a private joke shared with the cameraman, his red-rimmed eyes tearing up like some kind of sad sack Satanist in pancake makeup. His segment starts, "Hey, New Yorkers, not getting much sleep out there, are you? Well, science says you don't really need it. Better to be busy. We're so busy. We're so busy. You be busy too. Randy laughs sarcastically and lights a cigarette as they prepare to go to a commercial, but not before co-anchor Betty Goodtimes throws some gasoline on the fire. Coming up, flesh-eating bacteria found in the Central Park Reservoir. We'll be right back with more on this breaking story. Marla Maples Staples opens in Times Square. Who cares? It was all fear and titillation, media wilding, gentrification, and prolonged anticipation punctuated by soft-core bits of human interest. It might seem like the public was under attack, but it was all part of what people glibly called the zeitgeist. Corporate America actually wanted everybody to be awake all the time, never an unproductive nanosecond, never a moment not consuming. And to that end, culture was the product and creativity was the cri de coeur. Desire never had to end. People beat their chests, bragging about everything they bought, sold, or produced. But then they couldn't remember what they used to love or the life they had originally dreamed of. It was all absorbed by the media hurricane and spit back in waves. New recording devices had to be invented so as to represent their memories of passing through the world. But to do this, they had to re-represent the world. It was a vicious circle that would only get worse. And Frank was caught in it, just like everybody else, as he walked down Avenue A, tapping his cane to the music of the maniacal sidewalk, repeating in his brain. An organ grinder wearing a plastic Groucho nose and black clown glasses, flagged a wind-up OJ doll with a riding crop while he cranked out the soundtrack of the Odd Couple TV show. Out in Brooklyn, packs of wild dogs roamed among the abandoned factories under sheets of galvanized steel that beat in the wind like distant industrial drums. Car horns of the impatient nightlife pioneers added their counterpoint. The cacophony in Frank's head quickened his pace as he approached Sophie's bar, his next destination. Another beer wouldn't hurt, he told himself. But as he turned east onto Fifth Street, he saw an ambulance parked outside the bar. They were just then loading a gurney into the back, and that's never a good sign. Right, I'll end there.
All right, Carl Watson. You guys can unmute yourselves if you want to, or you can just listen to it.
I'll mute myself.
Oh, you got any people here tonight that like to get high?
That's funny as hell. Too bad it's true.
Right.
You should have like a clapping and a lap track that you can play behind everybody.
I know. Well, you know, that would be. I should get a mixer where I can do like little sound effects and play them and stuff. You know, but maybe next series. Maybe.
My boss now.
Yeah.
Why mess with perfection, though, Carl?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Where's Arthur? All right. Moving right along. I'm going to ask everybody to once again mute yourselves, except for you, Arthur.
Can you hear me?
All right. We're almost there.
Can you hear me?
Mute. All right. I'll mute.
Hello?
All right. Our next reader. Thank you again, Carl Watson. That was tremendous. I loved it. I believe that sounds like the same novel that is excerpted in the Sensitive Skin anthology. All right.
Can you hear me?
Arthur Nersesian. Can I hear you, Arthur?
You can hear me, okay. I wasn't sure that this work okay?
I think so. Can you try again?
All right. Is it loud? Is it soft?
I think you need to speak up. Speak loud.
You can hear me? Hello? Yes
No.
or no? Not working?
No.
No? Oh, shit. All right. How about now? Any better?
That's good.
Hello?
Yeah, just project from the diaphragm.
All right, from the diaphragm.
All right. Arthur Nersesian's 14th book, The 5 Books of Robert Moses from Akashic, was just published. And it is like 5 books in one. It's a whopper. Can we see how thick it is? Let's see. Tell me. Whoa, 1,500 pages of joy.
This is what happens when you have no social life.
And Arthur, here's another plug. Arthur teaches an affordable writing workshop in the East Village, and contact him on Facebook if you want to learn how to write 1,500-page masterpieces like Arthur does. All right. Without further ado, here he is, Arthur Nersesian.
Wave if you can hear me. I just want to make sure I'm connecting here. Okay. Hey, Tomas, I don't see you waving. All right. All right, so thanks to fellow readers. Bernard, thanks for doing this. And okay, I'll get into it here. While leaving a class at Columbia Law one afternoon, Karen Sarkisian overheard a fellow student say the war's finally come home. She thought the comment had something to do with the recent Kent State shooting until she stopped in the corner at a corner bodega and heard a fragment of what turned out to be a special report over the radio.
Arthur, can you go a little louder? Speak a little
Yeah.
louder?
That,
Yeah, it's
is that
better
better?
closer, actually.
Closer?
Yeah.
How's that? All right. Let's see. Okay. What's going on? Karen asked the bodega owner, who shrugged. That night at home, flipping from channel to channel, Karen was able to piece together the situation from various news sources. Apparently, over the past couple months, doctors around lower Manhattan had been reporting an odd spike in nausea cases. The nausea was followed by fevers and headaches. Soon, they also noticed an epidemic of skin rashes. One dermatologist who had been stationed in Japan just after World War II saw a cluster of red dots on a patient's wrist and was reminded of low-level radiation burns that he had seen outside of Hiroshima. The doctor contacted 6 state and federal agencies until one of them finally sent a team out with Geiger counters, and an hour later they determined that the background radiation of most of Manhattan was between 140 and 370 rads, which was a moderate risk level. Hardly a fatal dosage for the short term, but health hazards increased with the length of exposure. Eventually, they made 2 more discoveries: that the radiation rose from pitchblende dust, the ore that encased uranium, and that it came from not one but multiple sources. Within a week, they found that a large amount of pitchblende had been carried by the winds and was dusting the streets of Manhattan. The grains had flowed down sewer grates, had been cut up against doorways and windowsills, had been sucked into air conditioner units, had mingled with the grass in city parks, dusted along leaves and litter, slid down subway kiosks into tunnels, and peppered cornered newsstands. It had fallen on the wrinkled, threadbare garments of homeless and the crisp flannel cuffs of the rich alike. It crossed Karen's mind to call the FBI and anonymously report what had happened a year earlier. An old giant had bought a bag of detonators from her. Her fear was that if he was the guilty party, then she too would be arrested. Over the ensuing days, she searched the papers for word that they had located his place, but didn't find anything. She kept praying that it had nothing to do with her. The government's initial response was to cordon off everything below Worth Street, which was primarily commercial anyway. They focused on the 15 or so intersections where the radiation were highest. They sent in teams created to deal with materials of a hazardous nature, who sealed up sewage pipes to prevent contaminated water from flowing into the rivers. And then they used high-pressure hoses to wash the streets and brushes on wooden poles to scrub down buildings. Afterwards, they carefully ran Geiger counters along the affected intersections again and found that the rads had not dropped significantly. The radiation was like a phantom that seemed to move around at will, sometimes attacking, sometimes retreating, but steadily creeping north. Someone finally made the startling discovery that the main sources of radioactivity were ubiquitous sneakers, all the same color and cheap design, dangling from traffic lights and lampposts all around Manhattan. It wasn't until Karen saw a photograph of one of the sneaker bombs in the paper that she actually felt nauseous. They were the lighter-like trigger mechanisms they showed on the news were in fact the useless detonators she had sold to Daddy Longlegs. That night, Karen stopped in a liquor store and purchased a fifth of vodka to help her get to sleep. She decided that the old prick must have just been waiting for some deadline. Trigger, triggers, trigger, triggers, triggers, trigger, she drunkenly murmured, This would have happened anyway, she consoled herself. She downed gulp after gulp of harsh liquor until the room started spinning. Her anxiety dissipated and she found herself being sucked down the giant drain of sleep. Don't make...
You got to speak up, Arthur.
Well, this is the part's meant to be off, though. Don't make eye contact. You look at them and they feel threatened. Don't look at them. They won't look at you. We have about a quarter mile to walk before I can get us to a safe room. Understand? Don't make eye contact. Don't say anything. Just keep walking straight ahead. Don't say a fucking word. We might not know who perpetrated this, said Mayor John B. Lindsay, but we can well imagine why they did it. They hoped that we as a city would weaken and we'd abandon our homes. Therefore, my way of thinking is we shouldn't retreat a single inch more than we absolutely have to. As a symbolic act, the mayor announced that the Staten Island Ferry would always keep functioning, the FDR would remain open, and so would the mighty Brooklyn Bridge. But except for that narrow strip, the entire Wall Street area would be shut down. Likewise, work on the Rising World Trade Center project would be suspended until the crisis was resolved and the area was officially deemed safe. Although many remained optimistic, by mid-June, the Geiger County reports showed that radiation had spread like a tumor. A large chunk of Greenwich Village, from Houston up to 14th Street, from Broadway to 7th Avenue, was now restricted. The streets were fenced off and residents were given 2 weeks to leave before being forcibly evacuated. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. In hopes of reducing the pitch blende spread, the Environmental Protection Agency, which had been formed only months earlier, changed procedures. Instead of simply removing the sources of the pitch blende, every intersection where a lethal pair of sneakers had been found was sealed off. Giant wooden boxes were constructed, rising 20 feet in the air. Although there was no looting, Governor Nelson Rockefeller called the National Guard to aid with the crisis, as parts of the city were systematically emptied. On July 3rd, Mayor Lindsay went on the air to regretfully announce a third expansion of the partition zone. It would be moved from 14th Street up to 34th. One was now unable to go west of Park Avenue, east of 7th Avenue. Everyone living inside the area had to immediately be evacuated. Within 2 weeks, the new perimeter would be sealed behind a hurricane fence and monitored by National Guards in special uniforms to protect them from the hazardous material. Additionally, temporary housing was immediately made available by the city and the other 4 boroughs. For nervous residents still living adjacent to the quarantine zone, the city offered thick plastic ponchos, one size fits most, attached to air filters, and goggles that could be pulled down over the face. Despite all precautions, according to Geiger counters now fixed at nearly every intersection, the dust continued to spread. On a positive note, other than the initial health reports that had sounded the alarm, no new cases of illnesses were reported, but conversation focused on the long-term effects. Over the next few years, you're going to see cancer and leukemia rates spike throughout the city, warned the health commissioner. Tens, maybe 100,000 are going to be dead before 1980 unless more are evacuated immediately. Once Manhattan's interior was boxed off, it was carefully scrubbed down. Instead of being reopened, the sanitized areas were left sealed as recontamination became the new concern. When Karen started her final year at law school that fall, she almost always had a fifth of vodka in her handbag and frequently maintained a delicate balance between numb and functional. During the previous spring semester, before news of the contamination, Karen had gotten on the school's prestigious law review. But in September, she went into freefall, easily distracted in lectures, passing out instead of studying, steadily slipping to the bottom of her class. The general sentiment on campus was that the city was engaged in a losing battle. A poor man's Hiroshima, announced a headline in the liberal New York Post. Open quotes, despite constant warnings of doom and gloom, not a single person yet can be called a casualty in this attack, countered an editorial in the more conservative Daily News. But over the course of the next month, as radiation detection continued, Manhattan widened its quarantine zone northward 38th Street, 39th Street, 40th Street. Some streets were reopened as Geiger counter needles wavered a few points back. Because nothing like this had ever occurred before, there was no single office designed to handle the crisis. Although the various governmental departments tried to work together, jurisdictional spats constantly broke out between city, state, and federal agencies. At 42nd Street, the city finally held the line in what was called the Battle of Midtown. At an emergency news conference during Thanksgiving weekend, it was announced that a 40-foot fence would be erected along Park Avenue all the way up to 59th Street, then across 7th Avenue and south to 49th Street, then west to the Hudson River. Hopefully this will be the final partition, said the mayor. By the time Rockefeller increased the National Guard presence to enforce the new quarantine, the city's emergency housing stock in the outer boroughs began to tap out. A week later, President Nixon gave a nationally televised speech proposing a plan for temporary housing for victims of the New York crisis. The first area considered for large-scale development was along the eastern edge of New Jersey, from Perth Amboy up to Tenafly. The local community leaders balked when key developers were found to have mob ties. Nixon put together a bipartisan panel of respected city, state, and federal experts to come up with other housing solutions. By Christmas of 1970, the first rumors began emerging about a plan for the creation of a large-scale encampment where the underprivileged could reside while New York was being properly sanitized, and thus the Rescue City program began to take shape. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Arthur. You guys can unmute yourselves.
How low was I? Can you hear me?
You were good, Artie.
Here, it was great.
Yeah, we can hear you.
There's a illustration by Lisa Archigian here that I wanted to just show. Lisa Archigian.
No, but there's a.
All right, well, thanks again to Arthur Nersesian.
Hey,
Everybody, I love your background, Arthur. I love seeing Vazax there on the wall.
That's actually covering a lot of dirt.
Well, just like in real life, right?
It's exactly. It's not vanity. It's the covering of a mess. Okay.
You have to sit here because it's on.
Dead bodies.
All right.
I can't do it because I'm a twin.
I'm gonna mute everybody for a sec.
Hey, Art.
Okay. All right. Thanks again, everybody. So find us on YouTube, Sensitive Skin TV, one word, or you can look up Beer Virus Reading, Sensitive Skin, whatever. Use your Google sense, and you'll find us easily on YouTube. We got a ton of videos on there besides this reading series that we just did. And I just put one up recently that's really fun. It's got Herbert Huncke and Joel Rose and Darius James that I dug up from 1992. Some fun stuff. Don't forget to go to sensitiveskinmagazine.com. Buy Carl's book en français. Buy Arthur's book, 5 Books of Robert Moses. And all right, that's it. I will see you all. Oh yeah, and don't forget moi, reading this Sunday for the Local Knowledge Series. Again, I'm pointing at my screen as if it means something to you. There, see, it's right there. The link is in the chat. So, all right, take care, everybody. Thanks.